You won't believe it, but last Saturday we celebrated our mom's 100th birthday. She is an amazing woman and doing remarkably well for a centenarian. My mom, Pat, was my first role model when it came to using candor and kindness to make tough conversations easier. She operates with wonderful tact and grace. In fact, I remember when I was in the 6th grade having to tell her that a friend of mine I was with at the time was caught shoplifting some Flicks candy from a drugstore when we were kids. I asked myself, how would Mom approach this delicate conversation without upsetting the recipient of the news, in this case, her? So I introduced the topic not by saying that he was busted stealing. Instead, to diffuse the situation, I said that he tried to take something without paying for it. It worked. Instead of Mom getting mad, she shrugged her shoulders and said, "That's too bad." Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and we have an expert with us today. No, not my mom, who specializes in teaching leaders how to turn tough conversations into positive and productive outcomes with, you guessed it, candor and kindness. Betsy Petrie is a dynamic and experienced workforce development consultant specializing in strategic interpersonal communication for leaders and teams. We'll explore her book, Rails Talk, a Tough Conversations Workbook for people managers. You can use it to stay on track when approaching complex topics without derailing the conversation with unnecessary friction from excessive small talk, judgment, or sugarcoating. Betsy deeply believes this is the key to unlocking individual potential, increasing productivity, and sustaining growth. So please welcome to the Business of Story, Betsy Petrie. Hello, Betsy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, Park.
Yeah, well, it was great meeting you last week. Now you're coming to us from somewhere out in Illinois, right?
That's right. West of Chicago. I mean, it's a big state. Most people think of Chicago. I'm about an hour or so west, kind of on the edge, close to Iowa.
Yeah. And you were in Scottsdale last week doing one of your leadership coaching trainings and made your way up the hill up to our little humble hamlet up here of Munns Park, thanks to Mark Ferguson, a mutual friend of ours. And it was so great to have coffee and meet you in person.
You as well, Park. Thank you.
Now, he tells me that you have quite a musical background. I think both you and your husband do, right?
Right. Yes.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, I suppose the way that it lends itself to this is first and foremost, when I was going to college and, I had a musical background. I'm also an athlete. I was there on a scholarship and met some guys that were like, hey, do you want to, put a band together? So we did that. It was really fun, just a cover band. We had a great time. Eventually end up meeting my husband at that same university, and he's a musician as well. So it's been a common thread throughout our entire life, throughout our entire relationship. We spent a lot of time in Los Angeles doing a bunch of original music and working toward music for a living. And then there was a certain point where I thought, maybe this isn't exactly the right calling for me. I'm so happy I made that decision because where I've landed now, this is the calling. This is what I was meant to do. But all of that time on a stage and fronting a band, without question, lends itself to ease of facilitation, a desire to connect with an audience, thinking about the others, what they might want to see or hear. So it's just part of my whole story.
Yeah. And what sport did you play?
Cross country and track and field. I was a 400-meter runner and high jump, 4x400-meter relay, running.
I like it. And what instrument do you play?
I'm a singer. I also play harmonica, but I'm a way better singer than I am harmonica player. I picked up the harmonica in this latest, which is an alt country kind of rockabilly band called BB. Those are my initials for a really long time. BB and the Billies. And so we have a lot of music, Facebook, Spotify, SoundCloud, Bandcamp. So it's probably my most time-consuming, thing that I do in my life that is purely for pleasure and super fun to do it with your partner. So we play at distilleries, wherever we think might be of interest. And my husband is a prolific songwriter, and he's been writing some really great stuff. So we're having so much fun. We have a recording studio in the basement of our house. And so we're just putting out music. So I'm doing a lot of creative things these days.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And when did you get into leadership and consulting and
Yeah.
write your book and so forth?
Yeah. Well, the consulting thing is fairly new, but I got into this field after going back to school. After the whole stint with pursuing music for a career and living in Los Angeles, we returned to Illinois. And I was thinking, what is next for me? So here I live very close to a university, Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. So I just decided to go back to school, earned a master's degree in corporate communication with an emphasis on media. And with that, one of my first jobs was a corporate professor inside of a corporate university, teaching multiple topics. But the one that really struck me and has brought me to this place where I am right now was related to how leadership, as a leader, how do you execute a tough conversation? And that's brought me to where I am now and why I wrote a book, because over all the years of teaching manager boot camps and communication style and delegation and coaching, the one sticking point that folks tended to have over and over again was the ability to lean in and actually have some level of proficiency when having a tough conversation, maybe one about performance. Basically, telling when it was important, when there was some substance, it had consequences that most leaders of people would either stumble into it or push through it. But there was this significant area of opportunity in the ability to structure in a very simple way the components, the proper components, and the proper mindset for a tough conversation. And that's how my book, Rails Talk, was born. I had an opportunity to develop the theory, to field test it in a few hundred managers, and found out that it worked. And I guess, at that point, I'm like, wow, I probably need to write about this and expose a lot larger audience to something that works very simply. And that is, how do you stay on the rails when you're having a tough conversation?
So there are a lot, and I mean a lot of leadership coaches and trainers out there. I mean, as there are storytellers and branders and you name it, we all live in this land of abundance, and we can become commoditized because we're just another coach. We're just another
Sure.
consultant. But yours is really about this singular focus on training people on how to have tough conversations so that you can be productive, so that you can demonstrate empathy. You are not just railing on a person, but you are using Rails, your Rails framework, to help really shape that conversation so everybody wins in the end. And I loved that when we were talking last week, the deeper you got into it, your main focus. So tell us a little bit about your framework. How does it work, and how could our listeners start applying it in their world?
Sure. You just mentioned the word empathy, Park, and it's so, in this world, I find that there's a connotation and a denotation toward that word empathy. And so my book and my theory is based in communication style. And as mentioned when we were having coffee last week, there are certain words, confidence, empathy, that mean very different things to different people. So someone who's a super action-oriented, task-oriented communicator would probably ask the question, I'm sorry, this is a work situation here, and I don't think empathy is really appropriate. We're just trying to get something done, right? So there is a very different connotation as opposed to someone who was very relationship oriented and a careful, methodical communicator. Maybe somebody who practices receptivity and an agreeable nature would take that word empathy and, potentially overuse it because they care enough or maybe too much. So my book and the theory is all about candor, which the task-oriented folks can understand and know how to do, but with kindness. And that is the aspect that the relationship-oriented leaders and folks understand, right? So the blend of candor with kindness means, first and foremost, if you have something that is on your mind that you think needs to be said, let's just say it's about performance, to avoid that, we know can cause all kinds of problems. I mean, a loss of productivity to start without question, but reduced engagement, overall job satisfaction issues, fail to thrive, anxiety, stress for everyone. So speaking, your concern is very, very important, but how you do it matters. And if you think about the other, many of us have heard of the platinum rule. So
I
instead of
have
treating
not heard
someone,
about the platinum
oh,
rule.
let me share that with you. So lots of us grew up with the golden rule, huh? I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated. And there is
Wait, you mean
a
it's
slight,
not whoever has the gold makes the rules?
yeah, yeah, a slight flaw in that. So there are many authors, and the model that I really appreciate is DISC communication because it's very simple, it's very work focused, it's a work centric application. The assessment is work focused, so that's just what's right for me, and it's very simple. And the idea of using the platinum rule means, okay, so you and I might not be exactly the same person. I didn't grow up in your town, in your family. I had different rules about engaging with anger. Maybe some people said, in our house, we yelled. That's how it worked, right? So I'm comfortable with speaking my piece, talking to think, right? Sharing all that information. But in someone else's house, anger was maybe not appropriately allowed, so you kept those things to yourself. Right. So the combination of candor with kindness really matters. And the only way you can do that is to implement the platinum rule. I need to treat you the way you want to be treated. And DISC is a great example, and your audience may have many other assessments because, as you know, and as you have experienced, there are multiple types of assessments. Bottom line, the book works whether you use DISC or some other application. But most importantly, you must think about them and what do they care about? And how is it different than what I care about? So if I'm the sender of a very important message, and I want the receiver to take in that message in a way that works for them, then I must be thinking about them. And that might mean, say, for instance, you're a very thoughtful, careful, methodical, kindness matters to you. But you have to have a rather challenging talk in your mind with somebody who's very action oriented, task oriented, all about getting stuff done, a bit of a steamroller, if you will. Then if I approach it in my own way, which would be probably sugarcoating and softening the message a little bit, it's going to work for my receiver. So the platinum rule dictates that I need to frame it in a way that will work for the other. And in this case, straight to the point, really not a lot of, small talk. Just get right into it. That's what they need from you. So we just need to get out of the way of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Think about
Yeah,
the other. What do they need from me? And
I
craft it and frame
absolutely
it that
do.
way. Yeah.
Because when we are teaching the and but therefore narrative framework, I
Yeah.
just really emphasize that this story is not about you. It's not about your brand. It's
Great.
not about your leadership. It's about your audience. What's in it for them? Why do they care? And in order to really understand that, you've got to do your discovery and your research and really work hard to understand
Mm-hmm.
who they are and what matters to them so that you can demonstrate understanding. You can demonstrate appreciation for what they want, why
Yeah.
it's important
Right.
to them. And you can demonstrate empathy for the problem that you're trying to solve with them. And to me, those are the three forces of trust building in and of itself: understanding, appreciation, and empathy for your audience.
Sure. And empathy, once again, we come right back into it. There are some types, some communication styles that could care less about empathy, right? And that would be very tough for someone who cares a lot about it to deliver a message that it is receiver centric, right? So again, that's what I'm driving at is it matters more to some people than others. So you asked about the framework, the very first step. So it's RAILS, RAILS. How did I come to this? Well, I can tell you that I did a lot of research. And when I'm running these leadership programs, I'm finding all kinds of models, big fat books, nothing really simple. I needed something really pragmatic because managers are busy people. And I'll tell you, Park, this is a huge part of my brand. I don't mess around. I don't waste time. My training is not belabored. It's just the right amount. What I do is I go in and I ensure that you have something simple and practical that you can use. So, I found a 10-step acronym and it was too much. A manager doesn't want or care about 10 steps, but can they do 5? And I found that they can. So R is what we've been talking about so far, and that's respectfully relate. Who are they? What is the issue? And why would that matter to them? So respectfully relate means I'm going to get in, I'm going to get to a point in the appropriate way. Not a lot of small talk, but maybe just a little if you think they need it, and then get to the point. And you explain, hey, thanks for meeting with me. I want to share a concern I have with you. I noticed, and then you insert the concern that you have. The next step is just for out of respect to say, let me tell you why I'm concerned about this. Here's how I think it's going to impact you. And that is all receiver centric, whether that means loss of influence, inability to lead project independently, reduce quality of relationship, reduce productivity, whatever it is about that person, you've got to put it into the R, respectfully relate. And the rest flows parked so fast from there. A, ask a simple question, open-ended. What can you tell me about that? What do you think? Can you share your side? Anything like that. That's the A. I stop talking, period. L, I'm going to listen now. What insights am I getting? What is the problem we're trying to solve? What do I hear in this explanation that could be part of what comes next, which is S, steps and summary. And at that point, a leader's opportunity is to sort out what their listener or receiver is willing to do and how, since you are a gatekeeper and responsible for their career development, what's your input going to be? Finally, that's the steps. And then summary is making sure that you're following up, which means, hey, just so you know, Park, I'm going to be keeping this on my notes for our one-on-ones. And every time we meet, I'm going to be asking this question. So I'm going to be looking for an answer from you about what's changed. What roadblocks are you experiencing? How can I assist you, right? Keep it live until you see a change. And that's how quickly a Rails talk is a 5-minute talk, but it has all the essential elements to be able to develop and implement a receiver-centric conversation about something that concerns you.
And how did you come about this framework? Was it just simply doing out there and like a musician, you're taking in what's happening in the room, the harmony that's being built, the pace and tempo of the conversation, and then you brought it together in a very simple 5-step process that anybody can do?
Well, the crafty creativity came from the fact that I kept saying people need a way to stay on the rails because I found that they derail, mostly to their own psychological type, honestly. And so I kept coming up with these words, rail, derail, railing, rails. And then I realized that the job of rails in our society, in our world, is to keep people safe. Crib rails, bed rails, fence railings, stair railings, guardrails on a road. And there are lots of examples. But when I came up with the rails concept, I just thought, why couldn't I use that as an acronym, RAILS, and what would those words mean? So I played around with that. And as I mentioned, had an opportunity to field test it first before I wrote the book and get some really good anonymous evaluation to determine whether or not anyone was willing to use it and how did it work for them. And that's kind of how it came up. It was rather simple. It was just In innovation, I am an artist, so I'm going to be thinking in creative terms, and that's really how it came about.
Yeah. Now, what does a leader do if they don't have the availability of a DISC assessment or something? Because some companies are running around out there and people are
Yeah.
just kind of willy-nilly doing their leading. What can you do to sit down and really listen to a person and kind of decipher what sort of character you are speaking to so you speak their language?
Another great thing about the DISC profile and assessment is that it's public domain. So if you're curious about that and you'd like to use a model, let's go online and type in DISC communication assessment. But the beauty of the model that I used, and that is in the book, is that it's very simple, right? So you can buy the book too, Rails Talk Tough Conversation for People Managers, to give you the foundation. I think people need language. They need to understand. For me, what really works is 2 questions, kind of like a 2-step people reading method. So you don't need to go online. You don't really understand. Just grab a pen right now and write this down. Think of a plus sign in front of you. So it has a north-south line and an east-west line. So 4 square models, like the DISC model, is built on 2 pairs of opposites. The way that I interpret it is the first one, which is the north-south, all the way at the top of your plus sign. You think about people that maybe it's you or you're thinking of another. The best way is to just start with yourself. Am I the kind of person that likes to talk, to think? I'm action-oriented. That means when someone asks me a question, I'll probably start the answer before I actually know the answer. I will eventually arrive to it, right? But a talk to think person gives you a lot of information and more or less expects you to hunt for the piece of information that you need to answer your own question. Now, in contrast, there are those that are thoughtful, careful, methodical communicators, and we would say that they think to talk. So if I ask a thoughtful communicator a question, the first thing I'm going to get is silence, because they're thinking about the question, carefully crafting their response. And what you get is a response that is tailored to the question that you asked. Not a lot of extraneous information, so you're going to have to ask more if you did not meet your needs, right? Very different ways of communication. So consider that a continuum, and we would say that our style, if you're thinking about yourself, you lean toward one or the other. That is not to say that you can't do both. That's the whole point of it, right? If we're going to flex and use the platinum rule, we have to perceive this in another person. Parker, are you a talk to think, or do you think you're a think to talk person?
I think it depends.
Uh-huh.
It sort of depends on the situation, because I was running that very question through my mind as you were talking.
Uh-huh.
I probably err, or not err, but probably tend to be more talk to think, because it is how I quickly process things. And I come from a very large family, so you didn't have a lot of time to think before
Right.
talking if you were going to
Ooh.
get fed. So I'm probably in that continuum. If talk to think is north and think to talk is south, I'm certainly edging up north.
Sure. And as mentioned, if you think of it as a continuum, my goal is to get you to say I lean just slightly, but I can do both. That's great. Leaning slightly. And I do experience you, Park, as a talk to think. When I ask you a question, you can pretty quickly come to the answer. And you and I, when we converse, we don't have a lot of silence in our conversation. So I agree with you. I think you lean toward the top, right? Okay. Let's talk about the east-west pair. So some communicators are very task-oriented. On the left side of your plus sign, you just write the word task. Those are people that are all about the practical, objective. What is it that we're trying to do? What is it that you're trying to achieve? So they love to question, poke holes, drill down to try and get to the root of why you're having the conversation. Those are task-oriented communicators. On the other side, which would be the east or the right side of the horizontal line, you write the word relationships or people, something like that. And if you're a relationship-oriented communicator, these are the people that we know that nod their heads a lot when they're having a conversation. And their goal is to receive to accept the information, to take it in, thinking that you might just give them all the information they need, or at least to get started with. That is not to say that they don't have questions. It's just not the first mode of operation, right? So would you say that you're a task-oriented communicator or a relationship-oriented communicator if you had a slight leaning? What would it be for you, Park?
Definitely task.
Okay.
I mean, I am a big believer in the relationship side. You have to listen to understand and really kind of shut your trap, like you said, stop talking and listen. But in my mind, I'm always like, okay, what's the outcome? What's the outcome? And what drives me crazier than anything is people that repeat themselves 3 times on the same point. And it's like, I got it. Or someone that goes on, and I can't help myself. I shut down. I go, I got it. Let's next.
It's a great example of someone not utilizing the platinum rule with you. If they took into account who you are, your action orientation, and your ability to GSD, get stuff done, right? If they know that about you, then when they converse with you, have a conversation, offer up information, or ask a question, it should be well-crafted, succinct, and without a whole lot of casual, how you doing today? You would prefer that someone would get to the question.
Yeah,
And
I mean, there's always time for that casual, how are you doing today, when you don't have a deadline, when you have something going on or you're trying to accomplish something.
And in the interest of GSD, which is a part of your character, if you are trying to get something done, then the goal is to ask questions, poke holes, drill down so that you can determine what it is that is being asked of you, how you can offer assistance, how you can help them to get something done, right? So that's how you use the 2-step people reading method. So I have now shared with you that if I were to have a tough conversation with you, Park, I would focus on the fact that you would be okay to freely share information with me. So when I'm ask you a question and I listen, you're going to comfortably give me information that I can count on. And that's great for me for problem solving, because if I'm properly listening, I'm going to be able to get some really good information from you. So sidebar on that, if you are working with someone who's a careful, methodical communicator and I stop talking after I've asked a simple question and you're in the L mode, listen, expect some quiet time and resist, especially if you Park, the temptation potentially as an action-oriented person to fill that silence because we're disrupting them from their thought process. Allow a careful, methodical communicator to think in order to be able to talk. When they do talk, you will probably get some really great, succinct information and more than likely be able to move into S, steps and summary, quickly because they will already have thought about it and determined what they might be able to do to U-turn the performance to positively impact the concern that you have, right? So the style piece and the way that you approach the receiver matters so much. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. What do you know about them? If they are a careful, methodical communicator, then empathy is going to be important. And if that's not natural for you, then you're really going to have to think through how you're going to approach that in an authentic manner. And it can be done. It has to just be honest and say, hey, thanks a lot for coming to me. I want to share a concern that I have with you and just talk through what we think might be able to happen next so that I can continue to support your development. That's my job as a leader, and I take that very seriously. Then you move into it, right? So a little bit of small talk, a little bit of empathy is fine, but get into it. Get to the point so that you can get to solving the problem.
And one of the tools that I really like, and I coach people using that would fit right into your Rails thing, and that listening is, again, the and, but, therefore. Now, I typically teach it and train on it as a narrative framework in communicating, but it's also a fantastic story listening tool because it makes you stop and just let that person go on, especially if they're the ones that is having a big problem and is creating a tough conversation for you. Is you listen to them and then you sort it through and end but therefore in your mind. And when they're finally done with all that verbal vomit, you say, okay, Betsy, here's what I heard you say.
Here's what I heard.
You want this, and it's really important to you and the team because of this, but you're super frustrated due to this particular problem that we're going to try to solve for. Therefore, let's sit down and come up with 3 different ways that we might be able to approach this. And then
Beautiful.
when you do that, people freak out. They're like, oh my God, what sort of Svengali are you? You said that better than I did. I'm validated.
Yeah.
You heard me. You articulated it more clearly than I did.
Excellent.
And, oh, by the way, you were so clear, I forgot to tell you one other thing. And it's always that one other thing that's the real problem. Everything else was just symptoms up to that point.
Great. Yes, exactly. The validation of I heard you, I feel seen, I feel heard is so important and is an aspect most certainly of a Rails conversation. If you were properly listening, here's what I heard you say, but I have a question. What about this? Or I heard you say, is that correct? Right? Give them an opportunity to clarify. Great part.
Well, it's so powerful, and thank you for sending me your book because I went through it and I saw the great workbook it is. It's a small little one. It's nice. It's not like this big thing that overruns your desk, and it makes you think and jot down notes, and I would highly recommend it to anybody if you are having difficulty with tough conversations, and who doesn't?
Fantastic, Park. And I have been told, you can go as fast or as slow as you like. And you probably found, as an action-oriented human, that you can get through it in a good 60, 90 minutes and really take it all in because it is not complicated. And I'm very proud of that. It was my intention. And for those that are thoughtful, you're going to stop and you will journal. And by the time you're done with the book, you will have crafted a Rails talk that most likely you need to have. So the book being used as a workbook just means that what I'm seeing in my sales is that people are buying 5, 6 of them for their team or 5 or 6 of them for friends because it is a workbook. It's a journal. You own that book. And so, buying another copy and giving it to someone as a gift is a very thoughtful idea. And then they have their own and they can go on their own journey. So, yep, I love that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. They found time to take a look at it.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, now with all my guests that come on, I take your brand and your book and I run it through our Story Cycle Genie and send it off to everybody, including yourself.
Yeah.
What did it do? Because your book has been out, about a year?
Just November. It's only a few months.
Oh, okay. Brand spanking new, but you've been at this for a while.
Yeah.
And had you ever thought about your own brand story, as deliberately as the Genie did when it went in, it reviewed your website, it reviewed your book, and it came back to you with its findings?
Park, I did tell you when we met last week, honestly, I had a lot of emotions about this. The first was just, wow, really, there's some amazement and some pride because what the Genie picked up on were things that were very important to me that I knew about myself and that I knew that I wanted to convey. And in addition, brought this incredible insight to me, very specific words that I really wasn't emphasizing. I mean, probably the biggest one of all is that I'm a consultant. I do all kinds of leadership development, but I was not thinking about Rails and the Rails Talk methodology being at the core of everything I do. How did I miss that? The Genie pulled that up. And when I first read it, I thought, how come I wasn't thinking like that? It's that.
Well, because you're so close to it. You're in the fog of war. And that's why I started this show actually with saying how focused you are on helping people with tough conversations through your Rails process, and you are no longer a commodity out there. People understand what you stand for, what problem you solve. That's how do you turn difficult conversations into powerful outcomes. That's your one. Now, you can solve lots of other problems, but that's your core brand narrative that the Genie came out with.
And I really, really love the space of human to human skill building in terms of communication. And Rails is at the heart of that, is determining when you're having a dialogue, what does it mean to frame your words and your message in a way that is receiver centric? And you're exactly right. And thanks to the genie for highlighting that for me, because all of us, we're just trying to figure out, I love what I do. I love this work. When I'm in the middle of doing this work, the work that I do, I sometimes have this moment where my brain says, you're having fun, aren't you? And for me,
Yep.
that's a very, very important. Work takes up a lot of our time. You should be having a good time doing it. And if you can get to that place, it's very important to me, less important to others. But to be able to do this work and to teach humans how to evolve their communication, and the fact that Rails Talk is at the heart of that, was maybe shouldn't have been a big epiphany. It was, but it was also really a recentering and a refocusing for me, not to mention all the other information that I got from the report, which helps me to pick out specific words to continue keywords, right? How important is it to have keywords in your stories and everything that you write and everything that you say? So I have some great information about keywords and how I can approach my conversations with others, not to mention part from you saying, some of the things that you've said in the past. And I listened to several of your podcasts now and continue to hear you say, the church bell, the ringing church bell, if you don't craft your narrative, if you don't share a story, somebody else will write the story. So you better be writing it. And if you really like what you do and you think you have something to offer that's unique, that Genie is going to help you craft that message. And that gives you a sense of, why would I deprive people in the industry, any industry, of this opportunity to evolve their communication? And that has inspired me to be a better communicator of what it is that I have to offer, because that part can get really hard or challenging to continue to talk about yourself and what you do. You have lulls in that. So I am officially energized.
Well, and yeah, and the idea here with the genie is it really does three things for you. Number one,
Uh-huh.
it validates what you're already doing
Right.
very well and says, emphasize that, hit it harder. It shows you then the gaps. Here's some things that maybe you're missing that you want to clean up, you want to bridge, you want to make even stronger. And then it provides you, as you're talking about here with your keywords, some fresh
Fresh.
ideas, fresh inspiration on how to talk about your brands. And it starts
Hmm.
with identifying your top three audiences. And can I read the
Yes,
ABT
yes.
from your number one audience? And it said here, people managers being your number one audience, and the ABT statement that the genie created for you, again, based on your website and how you're already talking about yourself out there, says, as a people manager, you want to lead with confidence and build trust with your team and create an environment where everyone feels valued and productive. But you feel anxious and unprepared because traditional management training rarely addresses how to navigate difficult conversations effectively. Therefore, you can transform your leadership approach with Betsy Petrie's Rails Talk framework, backed by proven methods that help you deliver clear messages while maintaining respect and building stronger relationships.
If only the audience could see the smile on my face right now. How great is that? To be seen. You just validated me by saying that. And also, I feel seen. And that is re-energizing without question. So thank you. My gosh.
Well, and I love what it came up with your unique value proposition. And again, this was on the very first pass.
Yeah.
So you can go in and tweak things and adjust
Hmm.
it accordingly and then have the ultimate refined, defined brand story that will then create all of your other content. But I liked the UVP, unique value proposition, it came up with you. Human to human skill development that transforms workplace friction into productive collaboration.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love that work. It is, human communication, as I've mentioned before, is the first and final frontier. So when teams are not cohesive, they're not collaborating, we can usually point to friction that has to do with human interaction. And this type of work and focusing on the receiver and how to craft your message is essential in reducing friction. Essential.
And I remember you during coffee last week, once again, talking about that word friction. And it was a word that maybe hadn't really landed with you before, but
Yeah,
now it's like, yeah, it totally makes sense.
I did. I circled it. I kept finding it in the pages of the report. And the first time I thought I liked it, I circled it, and then I found it again, and I thought, wow, I need to be using that word more because it is a good descriptor for the je ne sais quoi, the thing you cannot name, when you're having a struggle with your team or when you're having a struggle with a one individual. If you're experiencing friction, more than likely it's a human element. It's a lack of cohesion or understanding around an issue or a problem, defining the issue, crafting the solution, holding yourself accountable to committing to that, regardless of whether or not you agree. It's all human. It's all human elements that make the difference between, an okay team that has okay productivity and one that's getting to market with great ideas first. It's the cohesion piece.
And it even showed itself, manifested itself in your brand purpose statement that states, Betsy Petrie Consulting exists to help people transform workplace friction into productive collaboration through human-centered communication skills.
Mm-hmm. So great. On the backside, when I'm running evaluations, it's so validating to see or to read that people don't often think about this as being such a huge part of fixing or solving whatever it is that's going on. And often leadership, when I talk to HR, they just know there's a problem. They don't know what it is. So it's a great, great starting point. And when you develop authentic quality communication, it opens up the door to safely have healthier conflict that is productive and gets to the point and the issues when people feel safe and validated. If I'm sharing my concern with you, and then you can validate that you hear me, I'm going to be more willing to engage in what's your idea and how can we create something that's truly collaborative that speaks to my concerns, and feeling comfortable that I brought my concerns to you in a way that you heard them.
Mm-hmm. And if you've got the report in front of you,
Yeah.
flip over to the OO exercise, the 9 one-word descriptors or personality traits of Betsy Petrie Consulting. And of course, we've got 3 for the organization. How does the organization show up? 3 for your offering. What do people experience while going through your process? And then 3 about the outcomes of what do they then can measurably receive after working with you. And again, this was its first take after reading through, scanning through what you are already sharing with the world out there. We're looking at page 10 of 18.
Yeah. Yeah. The OO exercise, developing the descriptors, your brand personality in 3 categories of organization, offering, and outcomes. Right. So when you read this about your organization, so in my case, it's me, right? So my organization is me and my book. And so far, what I've shared with you about who I am as a human, and then I look at me as an organization, and the 3 words are authentic. I hope you're hearing that from me, how important that is.
Absolutely.
Practical, yes, in the way that I like to operate, and adaptable. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Let's get to the root of that, because each concern or issue is unique. And so as we all are, right? There's no one size fits all when it comes to communication.
Well, and you think about that, Betsy, authentic, you are, who you see. I experienced that over coffee and online right here too. Practical, you said these 10-step frameworks are a nightmare.
Yeah.
Let's boil it down to 5, so very practical. And then adaptable. Why are you using it in the first place? To adapt to and solve a problem. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
How about offering? What does it say
Yeah,
there?
offering. So The three words under offering that came up from the genie are structured, which I'm providing a structure, empowering, training equips participants with tools they can immediately implement. Yes, agreed, because it's super practical. And inclusive, my programs acknowledge and value diverse communication styles and perspectives. Boy, if you don't do that, that means your communication is going out into the ethos and not being really properly received by anyone. So I really appreciate that. And then finally, under outcome, the OO moments are clarity, clients experience improved understanding across teams with reduced miscommunication, confidence that participants can gain assurance in handling challenging interpersonal situations. And I loved our conversation that we had immediately about the word confidence when we met last week, because according to style, some people have loads of confidence and others have less than. But what we're really talking about here is the confidence that your message is going to be received and is actionable, therefore, right? So all styles can benefit from knowing or feeling confident that they have a structure that they can safely work within to evolve the human to human communication. And then the last one should put a star by, which I love, is cohesion. Organizations develop stronger team dynamics and more productive collaboration, because when it comes right down to it, if you're a task-oriented communication type of person, you care about productivity. We all should care about productivity. And it's the people-oriented folks that say it's not just about productivity, it's about having a good day as well. I want to say it when I walk out of here at the end of the day, or when I close up my laptop for the end of the day, that this was good. I felt good. I was able to contribute. I was seen as an individual. So there is that piece as well. And that's the productive collaboration. That's what those two words together mean. We got to work together to get something done. And some psychological types could do it alone, right? Or they think they can. And some want to do it with others. And the bottom line is that as leaders, we are responsible for career development. It is our privilege. So if you're not already doing, you sure better figure out how to bring your team along, figure out what makes each individual want to give discretionary effort and feel valued inside of an organization. That is this piece. One size does not fit all. And the communication style is a big factor in how you can meet people in a way that they're going to hear that they are and feel that they are seen. And then they will wake up the next morning saying, I can't wait to get going on that project or this issue or develop that presentation, because it really matters.
Well, and now you've got these 9 one-word descriptors or personality traits that you can use as story prompts to go in and talk about cohesion and how you create it in organizations by sharing a true story that how you've already done this, well told, that people go, oh, she's not just saying it to me. She's not just telling me about it. She's showing it to me in action. And that's really the whole idea of the 9 one-word descriptors. They are the start of your story library to create very compelling content that people can't argue with. I mean, they can argue with you all day long about showing up as the expert and let me tell you about Rails and this, that, and the other thing. And they'll go, yeah, just another thing. But they can't argue with the true stories you tell about how Rails has impacted different leadership teams in all kinds of industries, in all sizes of companies. And you use this as a reminder of tell the stories. Don't just go out and brag about your exploits. Show the stories.
Tell the story that is receiver-centric, right? So it matters. Great.
So it's so cool. Well, Betsy, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see what you do as you continue to refine your story and get it super focused on that Rails program that you've got, the brilliant Rails program that helps people have tough conversations for very positive outcomes.
Park and the Story Cycle Genie, I'm just so thrilled. It's a really came for me at a really great time to be re-energized to get going with this again. It's a lot of work to keep your brand going and to tell your story. So, just like my book gives you a structure, to have a tough conversation, the genie gave me a structure to tell my story. So I thank you for that. And thanks for taking the time to create the Story Cycle Genie and write the books that you have written. It's great. It's a great opportunity to kind of dig in and find a way to re-energize your own self and your own goals.
Yeah, my absolute honor that you went through it. And I think you have a freebie for our listeners, especially for those that have tuned in.
Sure do. I was thinking about what would be helpful. And for me, what I find is that many organizations think they might have a problem to solve. They're not really sure what it is. So I want to offer up a free 30-minute, just a discussion. Tell me what's going on, and let's have a preliminary kind of needs assessment to figure out what might be going on. Sometimes it resolves a problem in the 30 minutes in and of itself. If you have a clear idea, I will also, of course, offer what I think would be useful. So if you're interested in that 30-minute, you can go to my website, betsypetrie.com, and initiate a 30-minute. Just please make sure that you share with me that you met me through Park and the Business of Story show, and that from there, I'll know how to book the time accordingly, and I will understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. So it'd be my pleasure to meet some of your followers, Park, and help them to kind of fine tune perhaps a real talk that they need to have of their own.
Yeah. Awesome. And that's Betsy Petrie, Petrie.com.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll put that link in the show notes too.
Great.
But I really appreciate you taking the time. It was great to meet you. Next time you're in Arizona, come on back up north. We'll have another coffee.
I appreciate you, Park, and I'll take you up the next time I'm around. Thank you so much. I hope you and your listeners have a great rest of their day.
Well, if you have a tough conversation on the horizon, then grab Betsy's book, Rails Talk. Or if you've got leaders that have to deal with tough conversations all the time, and who doesn't, please share this episode with them. And if you'd do me a big favor and rate us and review us on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate that, because it helps us get found in the noisy world that we all live in. Now, in this show, you also heard Betsy talk about our Story Cycle Genie and how it really helped her refine and define her brand story. If that is of interest to you, then sign up right now for the launch of the Story Cycle Genie at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, Story Cycle, then a dash, and then Genie. Plus, you'll get a load of bonuses, including free access to the ABTs of Storytelling micro-training course, a digital copy of the Narrative Gym for Business as your ABT companion guide, and a digital copy of my branding book, Brand Bewitchery. Oh, and you will get a reduced rate on the Genie when it launches. So sign up now at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. The link is in the show notes. And I sure hope you're going to join us next Monday when branding expert Brandon Coleman Jr. will join us to show you how to unlock brand alignment to maximize the growth of your business. So until then, and as you grow as a more confident and compelling storyteller, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one excellent. Thanks so much for listening.